The reason I entitled this video, Time is Not on Your Side, I was going through a box in my house the other day, and I came across some of the old public talk outlines that I used to give when I was a ministerial servant. And I came across a 1991 version of the public talk number 19, the title of which was Your Future, How Can It Be Known? There was a note to the speaker that the thought that was to be presented in this outline was that you can know the future. Bible prophecies give us that information. The future for Jehovah's servants is marvelous. Now is the time to prepare for being a part of that future. And the main thrust of the outline was an analyzation of Daniel, the second chapter, where Nebuchadnezzar was provided a dream, and only Daniel could recall to mind for King Nebuchadnezzar what the dream was of the idol, and then, of course, the interpretation of the dream was the march of the world powers. And one of the things that I wanted to do in my approach to deliver this outline was to contrast when mankind tries to foretell the future. There's a mixed bag of results. Whether it's the stock market, whether it's the weather itself, or any other circumstance where man tries to foretell the future. And one of the source materials that I used in fall of 1992, Time magazine came out with a special issue that was called Beyond the Year 2000, What to Expect in the New Millennium. And it came out during the time that I used to deliver this outline, and I thought it was going to be interesting to contrast what man thought the future was going to hold. At that time, Y2K, or the year 2000, was still 8 years in the future. And in looking through the article, it talked about what the future would be for technology and politics and a variety of different topics. And I flipped over to a page that had to do with religion. And in the century ahead, there was an article in the Time magazine called Kingdoms to Come. And it was written by Richard Ostling, was the name of the author. And obviously it was a fictitious work. The premise of the article was that it was the year 2092, so it was 100 years in the future. And what this writer was doing is he was looking back from the year 1992 all the way to the year 2092, and he was envisioning how religion and how faith was going to change and be impacted by different developments in the world. Anyway, I was looking through this article at the time trying to find whether or not Jehovah's Witnesses were mentioned at all. And lo and behold, they were. So under this article, Kingdoms to Come, in the second column of this article, in the first full paragraph, keep in mind again that this author was projecting himself into the future, and he says, no important sect or cult has been born for decades. The colorful creeds from olden times are tiny or extinct. Among them, he lists Baha'i, One Faith, Christian Science, Jehovah's Witnesses, and the Hemlockite death cult. Now, at the time, the reason I brought that up is because I was a little offended by the fact that here this author within Time magazine was forecasting that within 100 years, the faith that I held to was going to be either tiny or extinct. So when I would make reference to it in the public talk outline, I would say in a joking fashion, well, we'll see who has the last laugh in the year 2092, because obviously the teachings of the Jehovah's Witnesses were such that the Great Tribulation and Armageddon was imminent at any point. And so then 100 years from the year 1992, why, the only people that would be on earth would be Jehovah's servants. So Jehovah's Witnesses would be, in fact, the only religion, as it were, that would be around in the year 2092. So that was my opinion at the time, and it was the reason why I brought this article up. So I just wanted to share it. It's kind of interesting now when I look at it, that Time magazine time is not on your side, Jehovah's Witnesses. And the further along we get and the closer we get to the year 2092, I'm much more inclined to believe that what Time magazine is reporting here is much more likely to happen, as opposed to what the witnesses say in their publications is going to happen in the future. So in 1992, the masthead of the Awake magazine still said, it still referred to God's promise, and that's a quote, God's promise that the generation who saw these things start to occur in 1914 will by no means pass away. So it wasn't presented as if this is our thinking, or we're led to believe that this is true, or this is probably true. What the organization that put themselves forward as being the channel of communication to God's servants, they were saying God promised that this was going to happen. And of course, now we all know that in 1995, the masthead of the Awake magazine changed. And it no longer said God's promise that this generation would by no means pass away. Now it indicated that this vague reference to the time of the end. So at the time, there were already adjustments being made, just in case the witnesses were wrong, when in fact, the last 25 years, 30 years, has proved that in fact the witnesses were completely wrong, and the generation not only might pass away, they positively did pass away. So if the promises of the significance of 1914 weren't accurate, what else isn't accurate? And I think in coming years and in coming decades, time is going to be the enemy of Jehovah's Witnesses, because it's going to bear out more and more and more the silliness of the prophecies and the expectations that are being held out. Because at no point does a Watchtower Publications or jw.org say that this is what we feel might or would possibly occur. It's presenting their teachings as being promises from God. And if an organization promises that God said this would happen, and it doesn't happen, well, we all know that that's the very definition of a false prophet. So in the year 2092, I guess now I know who is in fact going to have the last laugh.